formulas, that's up to the legislature and the governor. But we have understood that Medicaid is a very high-cost area and another area where there has been too much waste and too much rip-off of the system. We have stepped up our audit role. The state division that's under Andy has some very smart folks that do regular Medicaid audits. We're going through the Medicaid redesign process now in the state, but we still have significant expenditures that are being managed through the more traditional fee-for-service, where we've seen much abuse and much waste of taxpayer dollars. So we continue to keep a sharp eye on the Medicaid costs. When we can find providers that are ripping off the system or inefficiencies and turn that around, working with the Department of Health, that hopefully reduces the burden that you're facing on the local level as well. So overall, the budget certainly was a positive step. It doesn't mean I didn't have concerns. We still see about $5 billion of temporary resources, non-recurring revenue that will help us in budget balance for the short run, not get us to that long-term level of aligning recurring revenue with recurring spending. So I think we are still in a time at the state level, just as you're doing on the local level. We have to make some tough choices about our spending priorities as we continue to try to move the state forward. While it's been a challenging time for the state legislature and the governor to deal with the state budget, there's no doubt in my mind that it's been a particularly tough few years for you at the local level, including certainly at the county level. We see evidence of municipal stress at many levels of government in our own state. We certainly see the headlines in terms of what's happening around the rest of the country. What's been the big poster child of what we don't want to see happen, right? The city of Detroit has grabbed all the headlines of late. But you look for other areas, Jefferson County down south in Alabama, and some of the cities in California that have also been at a point of near bankruptcy or actually filing for bankruptcy. That is certainly the most extreme example of budget and fiscal stress that we don't want to see happen here in our own state. As you know, we've issued reports on this area, tried to get more of a focus on it. 2012 report that we put out found that nearly 300 New York State local governments had deficits in the 2 prior years. More than 100 had inadequate cash on hand to pay their bills. Obviously, there's no one reason why the locality may have significant fiscal or budget stress. Some of it's bad decisions at the local level. Some of it, though, are systemic challenges that are there. Changes in the demographics, increasing poverty, declining population, that impact of flat or reduced state aid at a time of rising costs, costs that are rising that you don't control, and certainly the impact of the recession in terms of declining property values and assessments for many of our communities. So just taking one piece there, that issue of federal and state resources that are shared with our local governments. We did an analysis. We looked from 2001 through 2011, through that decade. The relative share of federal and state aid as a percentage of total local government revenue in New York decreased from 22% in 2001 to 20% in 2011. And state funding to localities grew by only 1.2% annually during that period. And much of that growth was in the earlier part of the decade, not in the more recent time. So as a result of these pressures, just at the municipal level, we have seen 27,000 jobs eliminated from municipal payrolls across New York State from 2009 through 2013. So what it really tells me, and what we've been trying to lend voice to, is that there are a confluence of fiscal issues that are challenging your budget decisions each and every day. And then if your job wasn't difficult enough, the property tax cap was implemented, and you had to deal with that as well. We've obviously played a role in terms of the implementation of the cap. It wasn't our gift to you, that was the legislature and the governor, not us, but we were charged with the duty of being the ones to tell you if you weren't doing the calculation right. So the good news is, working with you, the vast majority of local governments have gotten it right, really from the very, very beginning, in dealing with those reporting requirements. I know anything new is sometimes a challenge, and as I always remind my staff, nothing is stagnant. There are always new people, new administrations coming in. So we're going to keep a priority on working with you to explain what you need to do with that tax cap calculation. Then, of course, we're all still looking at the property tax freeze that's in the budget now, the new incentive for local governments and school districts to stay within the cap. So we're still going to have a lot to analyze and look at and work together. And again, consider us a resource if you have any questions with regard to how to analyze all of this. Our staff is certainly looking at the latest iteration that came out as part of the state budget so that we can be ready to help you. We perform thousands of calculations working with local governments over the past couple of years. We will continue to provide that assistance to you. The reality is that fiscal stress at the local level is not a passing phenomenon, a passing problem. It really is the new reality that we all have to contend with. And that means we need to come up with new tools and new strategies. And that was exactly the philosophy behind our fiscal stress monitoring system. It wasn't intended to point a finger at anybody or to put a bad spotlight on anybody. It really was intended very simply to be an early warning system, both to local government officials and to local communities and local taxpayers, and to all of us in New York State, about where we're at with local governments facing significant budget and fiscal issues. Why? Because we want to make sure everybody knows what's going on so that we can assist in providing the kinds of remedies and solutions so that we don't get to the point of full budget or fiscal crisis. As you know, we developed this system with your input. Our experts came up with a program and a strategy, developed the financial indicators that would go into the scores that we have. We then put it out for your reaction, and we got a great deal of reaction. Some of the reaction is not printable. Much of the reaction, though, was very thoughtful, actually, and very helpful. And we retooled our initial proposal from what it first was, and I think it's actually one in pretty good shape. As you know, we have different levels of stress that you may hit, or no designation, meaning we haven't identified a significant level of stress. Our initial round of scores, this is going to be done on an annual basis, on a rolling basis. We want to look at trends, we want to look at patterns. That we released last June found 24 local communities in every region of the state in some level of stress. We had another round of scores in September. It's all tied to when your budget year is. We found another 14 communities in stress. January, we put out our scores for school districts, found 87 of 674 school districts were facing some level of stress. So while certainly when we put out these scores, there's often a lot of local attention if your community is on that list, the reality is the vast majority of municipalities and school districts had no designation. They were not in a level of stress that we identified. When we identify that stress, what we then try to do, if it's wanted, is accelerate the kind of support that we can provide through risk assessments, through budget audits, through legal and technical guidance, through help with long-range financial and budget planning. We try to do that all the time anyway, but we certainly put a priority. If you are a municipality in one of those stress categories, if you want the help from us, we're there to do it. The reality is we've gotten a positive review on this system. Moody's gave a thumbs up because this system will help local governments better understand where they're at. It was rated credit positive. The American Institute of CPAs has indicated they're going to feature our system as a best practice. And you also know, parallel to our efforts, the legislature and the governor set up a financial restructuring board for local governments. They have a different measure of what qualifies to go into that process, but there's the opportunity for an analysis of your financial condition and the opportunity for some help through grants. You know, the bottom line with all of this work, again, it's not meant to point a finger in an accusatory way. It's really meant for us to be ahead of the curve. We've never had a bankruptcy in New York State. We don't intend to have a bankruptcy in New York State. That would be the worst possible outcome for the people that would live in a community that would go down that road. It would hurt the state's credit rating. It would hurt all of your credit rating. And the reality is there's not a strong appetite for the creation of many more control boards, as we've done in other cases when localities have had a problem, nor is there the kind of excess money to provide a bailout, as sometimes has happened in the past. So this is really meant to be a way for us to be sure that we're going to work with any municipality that's headed in the wrong direction to make sure they don't get to the brink. So if we can provide any assistance, if you're on a list and you have questions or concerns, we are available to work with you. Pension fund, I do want to give you an update on that. The good news is we continue to recover from the significant losses we had when the Wall Street markets tanked back in 08 and 09. We've now had another year, 5 years now, of positive return. The 2013 number, as you know, was a little over 10% positive return. Our fund value for March 31st, 2013 was a little over $160 billion. That number was significant because it was the first time we were higher than where we were at before the markets tanked in 08 and 09. Monday was a good day for me. I was able to announce our numbers for March 31st of 2014. Our most recent numbers show that we had a 13% positive return on the pension fund. Our fund is now estimated at $176.2 billion. So we continue to be the third largest public pension fund in the nation. We have hit a new historic high. Keep in mind we paid out $9.7 billion in benefits last year. So just think of the numbers. We were at $154.5 billion in 08. We went down after the markets collapsed to about $108.5 billion, and now we're up to $176.2 billion, paying out over $9 billion last year and many billions before that. So we don't have a liquidity problem. We have the best funded of all the big state plans. Our funded status is moving back in the upward direction. We're about at 89% now, and that's a 2013 number. When we update it, I'm pretty confident that number is going to go up even higher. You know, again, there was a cost in the short run. The pension rates certainly went up. We all know that. But the fiscal discipline that we want to show is that we're going to keep our plan well funded. That's important for the retirement security for the men and women who are in our system, whether you're an active employee or a retiree or a beneficiary. The reality is it helps everyone in the state, though, as well. Moody's upgraded recently the economic outlook for New York State from stable to positive, and they cited 3 reasons. Improving economy, we talked about that. Better state budget picture, we talked about that. The third reason was having a well-funded public pension plan, because we see what's happening in other states. States that didn't adequately fund their pension plans during the good times got hit with the meltdown in 08 and 09, and you read about Illinois being the worst case, less than 50% funded, Jersey, California, so many states going through a very, very tough time. What this has enabled us, because of our confidence in our long-term investment strategy, beginning last year, a little sooner than I thought it was going to happen, we were able to have a slight reduction in the contribution rate we charge our government employers and obviously by extension taxpayers. The ERS rate went down a little less than 1%, and the police and fire went down a little bit more than 1%. I'm certainly very hopeful. We still have our actuarial rate to do. Investment return is part of what goes into the calculation. We have other items that go into the calculation as well. What's the rate of retirements? What's mortality, updated mortality numbers? That's the work our actuary is doing right now. He'll develop a recommendation. We'll have it reviewed. We have an independent actuarial advisory committee that will review that recommendation. Ultimately, I'll sign off on it, and we'll announce those numbers towards the end of the summer, right before Labor Day. But when we have as good a year as we just had, again, I can't say definitively, but it looks pretty good that we're going to be able to have a decrease once again. Again, New York is ahead of the curve in terms of being able to reverse the trend. It may not drop as fast as you'd like, but at least it's going in the right direction. I think that's very, very good news. Another reason why this is important, and Steve was at our retirement advisory committee meeting, we talked about this. He's probably shared some of this information with you already. As you know, GASB 67 and 68 is coming, and it will impact on your financial accounting and financial disclosure. GASB 67 applies to pension plans, and GASB 68 applies to plan participants, which for us are participating employers. It's important to note that these changes will not affect rates. The rates will continue to be based on our actuarial calculations. The system's net liability will be allocated, though, among our more than 3,000 participating employers. So again, how well we're funded has an impact on your books now moving forward because of these GASB changes. It wasn't our idea, but that's what we all have to live with, right? Again, because we're among the best funded systems in the country, the net pension liability carried by our participating employers will be very small relative to those that are going to be carried on the books of local governments in other states with less well-funded plans. It applies to fiscal years that begin after June 15, 2014. So if you have a January fiscal year, it will be applicable to your December 31st, 2015 financial statements. No surprise, it's a complicated formula. However, we will be calculating your net pension liability for you, and we will be assisting with required disclosure. That is good news for you. We've begun our outreach. We're going to ramp it up in the coming months. Steve's given us good input on how we need to do that. Again, we're using our web to maximal benefit in this regard. We have a dedicated employer mailbox for questions on this particular topic. We will provide you your number through the employer portal. which is where you get your salary and service listing as well as your estimated projected bills and actual invoices. So a lot for us to contend with there, but again, having the strength of our pension fund is going to be a help as we move to implement those new GASB requirements. So, to sum it all up, what you know already, you have increased pressures, increased needs at the local level, rising costs that continue to provide quite a challenge for you, certainly for all of us in government. And again, that's why, from my point of view, it's important for those of us at the state level to work even harder to assist you as you tackle your responsibilities. That involves communication, involves partnership. That's what our participation in this event certainly is all about. I believe that if we continue to share information, share good ideas, we don't know it all, we benefit from your suggestions, we can take this emerging recovery, as tentative as it is, and really turn it into the kind of more robust and sustained economic growth that we want to see that will help all of our budgets, state and local, continue to be in balance. I'm a strong believer in working together to find solutions. And again, that's where NYSEC plays a very, very key role in that regard. But we want to keep the doors of communication open. We want to assist you in all the responsibilities. You have my commitment as state control and the commitment of my team that we're here to assist you to make your jobs as easy as we can. And I thank you for your kind attention this afternoon.